Um, Now, the uh, the second factor, really important, was the Industrial Revolution. Now, this has really happened sometime after the Enlightenment started, and this actually happened with the invention of the steam engine in particular, and mechanization, which allowed for, after the breaking down of the feudal society, people moving to the cities, but you didn't really have a huge amount of cities. What happened was they began to have mechanization. Began to have an idea that people were able to, they didn't need to work as many people on the land as they needed before. There was less people. There were less people needed to do more jobs, and in other words, people needed to find. If you needed less people, then they had to go and live someplace else, and they found the works because there was an industrialization factor, and there was things like the steam engine or things like that, which allowed for the growth of factories. People moved to the city. And in the cities, you had a whole new social structure that never existed before. Cities prior to the Industrial Revolutions were relatively small. Yes, there were some large cities in history, maybe even up to 1 million people in the whole metropolis. I think that was the largest, and I think it was in South America, and maybe in Mesopotamia there was one or two. But generally speaking, cities were a lot smaller than that. But with a quick and rapid influx of people to work in the factories in order to have food to live, you came up with another new social phenomenon. And that was the idea of slums and great poverty. Generally speaking, prior to that, people were very poor, moved out to the country, and they would work as farmhands. Because you always needed help on the farms. This changed with the Industrial Revolution. It gave changes not only in manufacturing, in agriculture, in transportation, in mining, every aspect of society. And the defining feature of the Industrial Revolution was mechanization. The people no longer had to use their own physical power in order to get everything done. And you did not need the physical power. For instance, one of the greatest inventions of the early American Industrial Revolution was the cotton gin. The cotton gin was a relatively simple machine which took the seeds out of cotton. Prior to that, the seeds had to be combed out on an individual basis. This machine, by Eli Whitney, allowed for quick removal of the seeds from the cotton, which meant you didn't need that many people, because that was the most arduous and time-consuming task in the whole process of making cotton fiber. Now you can have a lot less people doing a lot more work, which means on one plantation you no longer needed you need a less amount of people in order to grow more cotton, which made the possibility of large plantations with hundreds of slaves, which didn't exist before that. So that changed the face of America. But it also changed how the goods were produced, but also how the people worked. In other words, now they were not sitting and combing out the cotton; they did it with a machine. And then the industrial revolution. This was an innovation in England where they were spinning the cotton and making cotton cloth. They put one spinning wheel into one machine. They put 50 spinning wheels into one machine, so you were able to do 50 times the amount of cotton yarn that one person could do before. Can do now the work of 50 people. So it changed every aspect of daily life in incalculable ways. So these rapid changes in society brought the questions: what is going on? How is the society changing? How are we going to save? And because it made for a great amount of suffering, some of the early sociologists were saying we need to be able to find a way to keep society together through these changes. If it was, for instance, in France, where there were, in the French Revolution, there were bloodbaths and guillotines and people being killed left and right. And so the French sociologists were wondering how we're going to keep society together through these changes. Or in England, where there was fantastic poverty and child labor, which was rampant throughout because there were no laws at that time and people needed to eat, and there was no problem in the society then to employ a 5-year-old from 5 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night with a half-hour break in the morning and for lunch and a half-hour break in the evening for dinner. Hey, it works because they got $2 a week. Why not? There was no law against it, and the people needed food. So that was the impetus and that made people want to study and start to think and try to understand not only why things work, but also how to make things better or how to keep things from falling apart.